Welcome back to the second day here. We are co-sponsored this year by EM Lyon Business School. And I want to thank also Thomas Liu and Huawei Canada for his financial support. My name is Julian Chang. I'm the current president of the Chinese Globalization Association. And I'm happy to welcome our two presenters, one of whom is on, William Wei. Most of you know he is has been a longtime supporter of China Goes Global. And Professor Wei teaches about foreign direct investment, internationalization, and energy in the Department of Commerce at MacEwan. He's also been interim chair of the Accounting and Finance Department, as well as associate dean. And I want to thank him personally for being the original organizer and the driving force behind your panel today. So without further ado, William, I will turn the hosting duties over to you and let you take it away from here.
Thank you. Thank you for Julian for the nice introduction. And I want to welcome everyone's participation today. We are going to have a very great panel. And I also have Professor Xiaohua as a co-chair for this specific panel. She will join us later. We have about 6 speakers. We are really great to have Thomas Liu coming from Huawei North America, from the industry, and we have people working also for the industry and mostly from academic institutions. And this is our 15th China Goes Global Association annual conference, and the first time we have a panel specifically on Huawei in North America. Last year, the China Goes Global Association has a big book launch and a conference on Huawei Goes Global. So it was really great time to bring Huawei again to the stage, and particularly for academics to discuss the future of Huawei in North America specifically. So without further ado, I'm going to start introducing our first speaker, Mr. Thomas Liu, coming from Huawei North America. He is responsible for the public policy, research, and strategy of Huawei's government relations in the whole North America. He and his policy team gives policy analysis and also strategic support to the overall Huawei North America team. And he's responsible for establishing and maintaining a constructive engagement with all policy institutions, including think tanks, associations, and universities. He already spent 2 years and with Huawei. Previously, he's a PhD student at University of Ottawa in public administration, and he got his MBA from University of Ottawa also, and in the graduate school, and his BA in political science from Acadia University. He has won the Public Affairs and Communication Department President's Award and Outstanding Team Award and Outstanding Youth Award in Huawei. And also he passed the Canadian Security Force with solid knowledge of investment. So I'm going to share the screen of his presentation. And okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to open the presentation first. So this is the technical part now to test. Okay. Okay. Yes, I hope everyone see the presentation already. So I will invite Thomas Liu to start his speech. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you everyone. So thank you so much for CJ for inviting me today. It's really a great pleasure and honor to be able to present our company and introduce us here. But I would rather to take this chance to talk or chat with you instead of giving you like a very formal presentation, because I think for most of you, you don't know who I am, you don't know who we are, and I'm really taking this chance to communicate rather than giving you a lecture. So it's gonna be short, and feel free to ask me questions at any time after. So a bit of more about myself. It's very unlike my other colleagues with an engineer background. Neither I'm not from like a sales or marketing department. None of that. I am actually I was a researcher, and I am still a researcher right now within Huawei North America. My specialty is international relation, and when I was doing my PhD, I am focusing on Canada-China relation. So in this very special geopolitical situation, the company hired me, and I am lucky to join the company. And I think my main job duty here, as Dr. William Wei already introduced, is to maintain a constructive and positive engagement and dialogue with all public policy makers, influencers, and institutions, including think tanks, universities, professors, and so on and so forth. So this is who I am, and this is what I do. And I'm sure you will find out something different than other company presentation. Maybe we can move on to the next page. Next page, please. Yeah. So first of all, I want to give you like a very brief introduction of the company still. So currently, right now, we have around 200,000 employees around the world. We are like a fairly large or even huge company. I think in terms of the employees, we are one of the biggest in China. And this is only for the full time. If you are counting the contractors and supporting staff, the number is even higher than this. And we have been running our business in more than 170 plus countries. I think we are the most. We have the most branch office overseas in any other Chinese companies because we provide basic telecommunication equipment. We have to have a local team for maintenance and for customer service. We are not an internet company like TikTok or Tencent. We are a telecommunication technology company. That's why we spread out in many countries. That's the second part. In terms of R&D, we have overall 16 big research and development centers around the globe. That is only the big ones. And in terms of the employees, we have nearly 100,000 R&D staff and employees. And this is ranking number 3 around the globe for our R&D investment. We have 20 joint innovation centers and 5 cybersecurity centers, and we are ranking 49 overall for the global 500, the top enterprise around the globe. I think this number could go higher as well. So I think right now maybe we are ranking number 44, but this is like who we are. And our journey in North America starts like 20 years ago. This is actually the 20th year of us running in the US. And North America is very important to us, not only as a market but also as a great R&D hub. In 2018, I think US became one of our largest procurement market, and we had a long-standing relationship with all the US suppliers and partners, including Broadcom, Qualcomm, Microsoft, so on and so forth. After 2018, our procurement activities was slowed down due to the export control. Our partners and suppliers, they did suffer a bit in terms of that. And our story in Canada starts in 2008 when we opened our first office in Canada. But right now we have seven offices across Canada, in Ottawa, Waterloo, Markham, Toronto, Montreal, Burnaby, Vancouver, Edmonton, and Quebec City. And one fun fact that you may not know is our R&D office in Ottawa, Canada, was actually the first one and the birthplace for 5G technology. We started 5G research in Ottawa since 2010, more than 10 years. So this is a fun fact. And in 2012, we became an integral part of Canada's 5G network, and we achieved 27 million population wireless coverage in Canada within 4 years. Within 4 years later. And looking into the future, our company is committed to invest and support local communities in North America, and our goal is to make our presence here in North America, for North America. You can go back to the previous page, Professor William, Professor Wei. Just go back and back again. Yes. So I just briefly introduced what we did in North America, and we have 4 pillars to basically summarize our works. So one is digital economy, rural connectivity, R&D and talent development, and cybersecurity. What we believe that economic well-being of one region or one nation and its people is closely connected with digital capacity. This is especially important during the pandemic. We can see this. We can see that how internet and digital literacy is critical for your employment, for your work remotely online, for your children's education, and for your business success. Our team believes that a modernized infrastructure that Huawei can provide is crucial for a successful and revived digital economy. In terms of rural connectivity, Huawei's network has been proven that we are the most resilient and in harsh environments and remote areas. We have been proudly to help our partners connected with those living in rural and remote communities. Our R&D team has innovated technology to ensure our radio access network will function in some of the coldest temperature on Earth, including Canadian North. And by the year of 2025, we are committed to provide the wireless and network services to more than 70 remote and rural communities in Canada North by the year of 2025. R&D is always our core for our business success. Our work also support to create better R&D environment in North America and being a part of the academic and the industry conversation. Cybersecurity, I will also elaborate this in the next slide, but this is very important to any other countries. And we are currently having 5 cybersecurity centers around the world, and one of them is in Canada. And we hope that we can talk to the stakeholders and potential collaborators in the States to have the cybersecurity center in the US as well. So this, and for this page is our values that we share. And I want to go through one by one with you. So the first one is dialogues and engagement. And I think this is very crucial right now. I think our value here is not to persuade anyone that we are the best. However, our value is our presence, or our presence already has its value. We provide you a perspective from the industry, from Huawei, that how we see about this overall geopolitical issue, how we see about this industry cybersecurity standards, how we see about the supply chain through dialogues and engagement. And we believe this will not harm anyone, and this would be only mutually beneficial. Talking to us, having a dialogue and having engagement, we learn from each other. And that is because for the second point, we are fully open, and we with 100% of openness and transparency. Whatever you want to know about us, whatever you need about our information, we are fully open to all the researchers, academia, and students. And number 3 is what we believe that what we contribute to the economy, to the industry, and to the community. We are pursuing a shared success with people and industry. And number 4, we are embracing the global R&D and supply chain network. We believe that it is in the best interest for the humankind and for all the nations to work together to be a part of the supply chain. And this is the best solution for everyone. And last but not least is we believe that digital policy matters. And we want to talk to different stakeholders in terms of digital policy, and we believe that it is in the best interest to have a clear cybersecurity standard. We believe that right now it's about the time to let the business to do the business and let technology be technology. It's not everything needs to be political. We believe that I think for many situations, banning Huawei is not the real issue. The real issue is why you're banning us. I think right now, if we have a very clear cybersecurity standard and companies fails to meet that, the company will quit the market with no regret, because we know where is a standard and there is a clear standard. However, if there's no such thing and there's no clear cybersecurity standard, and one company was being arbitrarily banned because of so-called political reason, we do not believe that is in the spirit of that is not good for the industry, that is not good for the business, and that is not good for the technology development. So we believe that a clear cybersecurity standard is best for everyone. And we can go to the next page. So this is what we did and across the continent. So we have Connecting Canada's North project. We have Canadian First Nation document series to support the local business. We have our donations for during the pandemic. And we have also the CSR activities in California. We are supporting local communities and local athletes. And we have our youth mentorship. This is only a part of what we did in North America. We care about the community, we care about the business, we care about the industry, and we believe that by working hand by hand, that the community, business, schools, research can go all together, moving for the better for our next generation. And next page. And this would be our last page. And I want to introduce several topics and leave for further discussion and dialogues with our friends in academia, professors and researchers coming for today. So we would happy to keep the dialogue going with the academia and the researchers. So number one topic we both care is trade and economic growth. Number two is there may be some further discussion of our perspectives and your perspectives in terms of the trilateral relationship, Canada, China, and the US. And also we would be happy to provide all the researchers, students, and professors with a tour opportunity. You can virtually see our campus, and you can virtually experience the 5G technology, digital economy, smart city, green energy, whatever we did, you can do that online. And when the pandemic over, we would be happy to invite you to our campus. Cybersecurity is also a big topic, as I explained in the last page. We want to still continue the dialogue with academia. And the last but not least is to know who we are. We leave this topic wide open. If you want to know more about who owns Huawei, who is Huawei, and we will be more than happy to discuss this with you. So I will leave this for 5 topics here for further discussion. And that is at the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Thomas. And thanks very much for your commitment in engagement. And we have a few questions coming up from the audience. And I will open up maybe 5 minutes to people ask you a question, because I know you have a busy schedule. You might have leaving the meeting earlier. So if anybody wants to ask question, please take the opportunity. Thank you. Wenxia, you have a question, right?
I had a question in the chat. He wanted to know what is the Huawei's China relationship with the overseas office.
Okay.
Okay. It's a very good question. Is one important part to know the governing structure of the company. I think right now our local office are mostly running locally. We have more than I think we have more than 90 or larger amount of percentage of local employees serving as the staff and the management level, all round level in terms of the local office. I think only a few of the expats from the HQ from China, they will be sent here for years, for terms, and they will go back. So in a sense, I think the Huawei HQ is in Shenzhen, but all the business decisions and all the business operations are in the local office, and most of the employees are local employees. That is my answer. And but we do have a good liquidity, and the talent flow within the system. So, for instance, if you are working in the Greater China region, you will be getting the chance to transfer to Europe. When you are in Europe, you will be also get a chance to move to China. So this flow is actually still there. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. So if we don't have more questions, I'm going to move. Oh, sorry, Professor Mukherjee, please. Yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, hi, Thomas. Thank you for your excellent presentation. I was just wondering, would you or your organization would be interested in terms of collaborating with academia in terms of understanding cybersecurity and trade and economic growth? Cybersecurity in North America, especially in the United States, as you very well know, is a hot topic. So whether there is any kind of industry academia collaboration that your organization would be interested in?
Oh, this is absolutely a great question. Yes, right now in Canada, we have like a security verify program with working with local university and the government. So in that project, we have been working for years, just to test so just to test. It's like a trilateral cooperation: government, university, lab, and us. And Huawei is the only company that we are taking this test, collaborating with the government and the university. However, we're trying so hard to bring everybody else on board, but we are the only participant right now for this, and we are looking for partners like this in the States.
Thomas, I also got a question here, and that is concerns the rotating management at Huawei, that you every 6 months trade places. How is that really working in Canada and in America?
Thank you, Andres. I think so. The rotating chairman, the rotating chairman, or that is more for the HQ. I think for every 6 months, we will have a rotating chairman, and they will be the ultimate decision maker for that. But in terms of Canada and the US, is the local president. And that is not rotating every 6 months. I think that is rotating every 4 years. But these are different. So in Canada and the US, the president makes the decision. They will talk to the HQ, but it's not rotating every 6 months. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if we don't have further questions, I want to thank Thomas Liu again for your excellent presentation, and also want to thank Huawei for the commitment in community engagement. So I'm going to move to our next speaker. Our next speaker is coming from Kent State University, Professor Mukherjee. And he is an associate professor of economics, and his area of specialization are in international trade and business issues. His work has been published in well-known journals such like European Business Review, Economics Modeling, Management Decision, Review of Development Economics. He recently co-edited a monography entitled The Belt and Road Initiative, China's Global Business Footprint. And he has been recognized as an excellent scholar related to emerging market and economics research area. This internationally recognized, he also leads an internationally recognized group called Emerging Market Internationalization Research Group at the University of Sydney. And he's currently also a research fellow at the Center for International Business Education and Research at Georgia Tech. So without further ado, I'm going to share, first of all, the slides from him and Professor Deepraj, you can start. Yeah.
Sure.
Give me 1 second to open your slides. Thank you. And his topic is taking stock, Huawei taking stock, and moving forward. Thank you.
Hi all. So again, right after Thomas's presentation, I think this is really apt. So I really thank William for organizing it in that way. So when Wenxiang mentioned it to me, I was like, okay, what's right now is right now the position of Huawei. When I think about Huawei as an academician, as someone who does his work, who does his research in international business, international economics, it's really that's the flagship thing of China's success of Chinese transnationals, Chinese multinationals in the last 20 years. It has been staggering. The growth has been staggering. If I think about the network, kind of say telecom equipment providers back in say 2007, 2008, I think about Nokia, I think about Ericsson. And when I think about it in 2020, I was thinking about Huawei right away. So that's where I was thinking, okay, how about what's the scenario right now, especially with the US sanctions, what's going on with Huawei? And so my paper here is, or my presentation here, guys, has nothing to do with, I really didn't want to bombard you with international business literature coming from very, pedantic academic standpoint. I was trying to see if I can find data and see what's the current data telling us about the status of this company. So I will share with you a few data points. I'll share with you what I could gather, what I could find, from public databases, and I could, put into, say, one folder. So William, you can move on. We can go to the next slide. So William, you jumped, yeah. So first one is section 1, guys. Section 1 is about the financial figures. If you think about the financial figures, there is actually room to grow for Huawei. And that's something very important to understand, because as an academician, we know that then there is economies of scale. So does there room to grow? If I can go to the next slide, you will see that the global top 20 tech companies, it starts with Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook. So among the top 20, Huawei is not there. And I don't think that's actually a negative thing. I actually think that's a positive thing, because that way you can grow. The economies of scale can still be there, which is a very important, perspective. So there is room to grow is always essentially a very important thing for any transnational company. So that's my first kind of understanding. Okay, so there is room to grow, and we can move on. If you look at the revenue of Huawei, as I was mentioning to you, it has been staggering. The growth to see something like that, the parallel of it in the economic, in the economic history would be actually China's growth in the last 20-25 years. So it's 891.37 billions of euro. So yuan would be roughly around $150 billion if I look into the current exchange rate. So the growth has been steady. However, I'd like you to see one point before I move on further, which is, if you look at the growth, guys, I have given you almost like, say, 12 years out here. You can find that the growth is happening, but the rate of growth is actually decreasing or not increasing as such as it was before. Say if I go from 2012 to 2013, that's not the same rate of growth. If I go from 2019 to 2020, that's something that you need to kind of look at from this graph, and I can move on. In terms of the revenue from the business segments, of course, the network, which is the telecom equipment provider, that's a huge part, and also the smartphone. The smartphones are also the huge part. But then again, in terms of telecom and in terms of smartphone devices, you can see that between 19 and 20, you don't see that growth happening. So somewhere, which I will come next in one of my slides, we will talk about it, but you will see that the US sanctions are actually biting the company in terms of its growth. that we can almost see from here itself. I mean, again, if you look back from 2013 to 2016, if you look into carrier network and if you look into smartphone devices, that is, consumer business, you can see huge growth happening. But that growth is somewhere is getting a little limited once I go into the current years, 19 and 20, and actually 21 too, because the first 2 quarters, according to Huawei's own report, is not essentially what it was back in 2020. So I can move on. In terms of the revenue, again, China is the bulk of the revenue from where Huawei is getting the revenue. But that's not a problem. But the point is, China was like half. If I think about, say, 2015, China was half of the revenue of the total global revenue for Huawei. But if I look into 2020, China is 3/4 of the revenue of the growth of the kind of, say, total revenue of, say, Huawei in 2020. So that's where it's kind of getting a little centric over there as well, which can be a concern. And I'm sure that the organization is actually looking at that as well. That's my that's what I found in terms of looking into it, if I plot the data accordingly. And I can actually move on. So telecom network. Huawei is the largest telecom provider. Yeah, William, I can actually move on because in terms of the brand value, Huawei is the largest telecom provider. Now that again is something that success story is actually a case study right away. Simply because, as I was mentioning to you, if I look back in 2007, 2008, I really don't see Huawei. But back in like, say, in 2019, 2020, Huawei is there right away. And it's the largest brand. It has the largest brand value in terms of, this is Bloomberg's analysis. They actually conduct a primary data survey globally. So this is very, very well, reliable data that way. So, which is really a very successful venture that we have to highlight. I can move on, guys. However, this is a report that I was getting, and since I was preparing for this presentation, it's undisputed leader right now. However, if you look back from July 2020 to July 2021, there is a 14% decrease in terms of telecom equipment sales globally. And Huawei is basically mentioning that it's moderate but solid growth will happen by the end of 2021 once all the 5G rollouts will, gain the momentum at that point in time. So already we can see that there is a lack of growth that's happening, and that can happen once you reach the economies of scale and you are at maybe constant returns to scale. That can happen, I understand, but that's the worrisome part that's coming in. I can move on actually. Smartphones, I will just talk about it briefly, and you can see smartphone growth is really, so the black one is Huawei, guys. If you go to 2012, it was 4%, 2013, 4.9. Now just come back to 2019, it's 17.6%. From 4% in 2012, in 7 years, it's 17.6%. That's a staggering market share already, that you are having. However, from 17.6%, if I actually go to 2020, because I really don't have data for 2021, smartphone sales is actually going down. It seems that the market share is decreasing to some extent. So I can move on, guys. That's where I come to issues. Now the issues which, Thomas also mentioned, the first one is there a downward spiral? If there is a downward spiral, there is of course a way out from it too, but there can be a downward spiral. There are 9 countries in terms of 5G rollouts that have banned Huawei. So United States, of course, and Australia, New Zealand, Japan. So all these factors and the US-China rivalry, that kind of political, global macro and political influence that might impact this particular company, and it's impacting this company apparently. If I look into the data, there may be other factors. I haven't looked into the factors. I'm looking into the data and I'm making a conjecture out there. My conjecture is probably that US-China rivalry is causing semiconductor chips to become very, very inadequate, and that's making the smartphone devices to get the components challenging for the smartphone devices. And all these issues, there is a perception that's coming into which is affecting the consumers when they are buying stuff. And that might play an effect here. But that's, I really don't have any factors in terms of solid evidence to prove that point. I'm looking into data and I'm making a kind of an extrapolation from there. There is, I will not mention the AUKUS Pact, you already know about it, but these are the political influences that I was talking about. And 600 million people in India have, they do use smartphones. However, guys, India's 5G rollout, Huawei is excluded from it. So that's a huge setback, I think, in terms of if you include all the other countries and already, and then there are 600 million customer base that's there right beside you, which is not there then anymore. So I can just move on. So why am I saying that this global macroeconomic, macro-political influence can play a role? Now I will become an academician, a very kind of a, say, a very pedantic academician just for a minute. And I'll say that's because there are extant literature that talks about animosity, which is economic and political, and that affects consumers. Consumers think of the country of origin of that product. And if the country of origin has some kind of a rivalry with a country, with the host country, so the home country and the host country have some kind of a rivalry, that will actually tarnish the brand image of that brand as well. And unfortunately, if that's happening, that's if there is a perception like that, that will influence the consumer's decision. And there is there's umpteen number of literature, umpteen number of articles that exists that actually talk about it. I've mentioned a few over here. Just so this is again from a broader perspective, I'm writing a case on Huawei. So from that perspective, Xiaomi, on the other hand, Xiaomi was not really that successful a few years ago when Huawei last year, Huawei was the market leader in terms of smartphone. But Xiaomi is really catching up pretty soon. In Europe, it's really gaining momentum. It's gaining momentum in India as well. I mean, I'll just go to India just in a bit. But Xiaomi is right now becoming the market leader in the smartphone devices sales. So that's, again, there is a competition, and that competition is a homegrown competition as well, which is very important to note. I can move on, actually, if you don't mind. If you look into the growth of Xiaomi's in Europe, Xiaomi was nowhere there. And guys, this is not many years. I've given you quarters over here. So just the quarterly growth of Xiaomi is stunning. It was the first quarter of 2019, it was only 4%, so only 4%, and it was 24% already back in, so this is second quarter of 2021. In a similar vein, I was mentioning to you that 600 million people are there in India who are using smartphones, and that's a huge, huge customer base. But Xiaomi captures that customer base. It's like 26% of it, it's coming from Xiaomi, and Redmi 9, 8, 9, 10, and so on. In fact, when I go back in India right now and I see Redmi, so many of those smartphones. So Huawei's presence is something that's getting limited there as well. So my conclusion and recommendations would be this: Huawei is still financially very strong. The last annual report is suggesting that they have a huge revenue that happened, $50 billion. This is just top of my head, I'm saying. Market leader, that there is no doubt about in telecom equipment provider. Smartphone, it's a huge competition going on right now. Continued investment in research and development. Thomas just mentioned to you in the last 10 years, $90 billion. I can tell you last year, Huawei spent $22 billion, whereas Apple actually spent less than that. So research and development can be a great insurance, for Huawei. Diversification, they are doing it already, and that can actually offset the impact of profit declines that's there in the other sectors. One is software. They have developed a Harmony operating system right now, which again operates in all the Huawei smartphone devices. So that's a big plus that can be there. They're actually getting into the EV market. They have this series SF5 that they have collaborated, and they are launching it. It's actually at their flagship stores. They already are showcasing this one. So EV market is another thing. They're also going into enterprise business solutions, cloud, and etc., artificial intelligence. So all this would play a role definitely to diversify the businesses other than carrier network business, enterprise, and consumer business, to go into other businesses. that will diversify it. And as I had mentioned to you, that will give you the economies of scale as well. So that's really a very humble submission from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepraj, and thanks for your excellent presentation and all the data supporting your arguments. And these are very extensive collection of data and comparison between what developed over there, particularly on the smartphone between the two Chinese companies. And if anybody have a quick question, you can ask. And then I will, if not, I will move to the next presentation. Okay. So our next presenter.
There is actually
yes,
one question.
There's one question. Okay, please.
Yeah.
Ask.
I think in terms of delving into data that there is a causal effect. I find that there is a causal effect, but I don't want to share that because right now it's very correlational. And I just looking into data and I'm trying to find a conjecture. But I delved into a few data sets and I was exploring a few things. And it seems to me that going into the regression analysis, that there can be some causal effects that one can find in terms of if I control for the cross-country effect. I'm not going into the econometric analysis. I'm just saying if one controls for the fixed effects of cross-country, one probably can find something. And I was looking into it. I'm not 100% sure yet, but my hunch is yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to share the the presentation of the next person. Our next speaker, coming directly from China, Professor Hu Haibo is the Dean and Professor in Jiangxi University of Finance and Economics, and he's one of the top researcher in case studies in China, and also member of Advisory Committee of International Case Research Association. And his student, Yiqin Wang, who is a PhD student in the same school, and very soon a visiting student in Denmark, and she will report on behalf of his her supervisor, Professor Hu Haibo. And Professor Hu's team is mainly doing the research of innovation and strategic management. And his presentation is Huawei from China to the world. So, Professor, Miss Yiqin Wang, please, if you can show your open your video and start your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I can't find the permission of the video, so I'm fine. It's difficult for me to open my video. So can I just begin my report?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's a great honor for me to report here on behalf of my tutor and our team. Today, the subject of our report is Huawei from China to the world. Next slides. I will report in two parts. Is Huawei's international situation and strategy. Firstly, we will talk about the situation for the development. There are some rank lists. There are some like top 5 Chinese private enterprise list and list of brand influence Chinese enterprise in One Belt, One Road initiative. There are some ranking lists in China, and we can find Huawei always ranked the first. So, and also in the world's international ranking list, top global 500 is also Huawei ranks 41st. And we can see that Huawei's corporate strength and internationalization capability is very well. And the next slides, we can see that Huawei's global business review in the recently, Huawei's global business review has kept rapid growth, and also we can see that EMEB has been the largest overseas market, And next slide. Specifically, we can find Huawei developed very well in Sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. And meanwhile, they are also mostly lower middle income and upper middle income countries. And we can say also that even though the US is the largest ICT market, but it's difficult for Huawei to make a big break here. And next slide. And we can see that, but there are some also challenges. In 1920, Huawei's development has faced some challenges. The growth rate of global business review has slowed down. And maybe next slide. Next page. In particular, as early as 2012, the U.S. government launched the investigate report from, and also from 2019, there are 4 rounds of sanctions against Huawei. It extends from Huawei to the entire supply chain. And the next slide. In order to meet these challenges, Huawei began to take a series of measures and strategies. First, Huawei began to strengthen independent innovation about including software and hardware. In terms of software, Huawei started to develop home system and launched Huawei mobile service to replace GMS. And also in terms of hardware, Huawei launched the self-developed mobile phone processor and built an independent and controllable chip supply. Next, Huawei established strategic alliance, including industry organization, association, and enterprise. With the effort of enterprise and the government, Huawei has gradually overcome the adverse effects. Next page. For example, in 2018, Huawei's CFO Meng Wanzhou was arrested in Canada with the effort of 2 years. On September 25th this year, Meng Wanzhou finally returned to China safely. Meng Wanzhou's return made the whole of China boil over, and this also makes us firm believe that in the future, Huawei has the ability to be able to overcome difficulties and continue to develop internationally. And in addition, next page. Huawei also take part in social responsibility actively. In terms of digital, Huawei proposed the Digital Inclusion Initiative Tech for All to achieve sustainable development in 4 areas: education, environment, health, and development. In addition, next page. Huawei built lots of infrastructure projects in developing and developed countries. Although Chinese companies will face the liability of countries of origin, but when we enter the market of developed countries, our technology advantage, experience advantage, etc., can help Chinese multinational companies enjoying certain advantage of countries of origin instead of the liability of countries of origin. So we believe that Chinese multinational companies will achieve better development in the future. That's the slide, maybe. Okay, that's all. That's the slides. Thank you for listening.
Thanks very much for Yiqing Wang. Although you cannot show your video, and I want to thank you very much, and also Professor Hu Haibo put up all these slides together, and also the current development from the Chinese perspective on Huawei. So I'm not sure if audience have any quick questions. If you want, you can ask. Otherwise, I'm going to move to the next speaker. So our next speaker in terms of time is Dr. Hadi Chapardar, and he's one of my colleagues in MacEwan University and an assistant professor specialized in strategy and sustainability. Sorry, can you, Yin, can you mute yourself?
William, you have to unmute, please.
Sorry, I forgot to open my voice. I want to introduce formally my colleague, Dr. Hadi Chapardar. He's an assistant professor of specialized in strategy and also sustainability in my university, MacEwan University here in Canada, Alberta. His research is primarily phenomenon-driven, where he uses inductive single and multiple case methods to tackle real-world issues in a world characterized by complexity, ambiguity, and uncertainty of ground challenges. And Hadi's research agenda broadly includes the interaction between business and its external environment, such as sustainability, tensions, and collective actions. So I will formally invite Hadi to make his presentation, and give me 1 second to share his presentation. Yeah. And this is a project Hadi and myself and a student did about 2 years ago, and we did publish it with a book chapter, and also this was recorded on HS Talk. Thank you, Hadi.
Thank you, William. Hi, hello everybody. The work I present today is based on an ongoing case study, as William mentioned. We worked and we are still working on Huawei's strategy in North America, especially in Canada here, during a unique period of time. The temporal bracket of the research is basically, as the research scholars say, temporal bracketing, represents an unprecedented time, unprecedented crisis in the history of the company, when Meng Wanzhou, CFO of Huawei and the daughter of its founder, Ren Zhengfei, was arrested in Canada. On December 1st, 2018, Meng was arrested in British Columbia at the request of US law enforcement due to an extradition treaty between Canada and the US. The cause of arrest was charges about violating US trade sanctions against Iran by one of Huawei's subsidiaries. So Meng remained under house arrest until September 24, 2021 for nearly 3 years. Thank you for moving to the next slide. And as you know, Huawei is one of the pioneers in 5G technology, if not the top pioneer. And in recent years, it was trying to sell this technology across the globe. Now, put yourself in the shoes of the company, a business which is facing such a situation. You have internationalized too and invested in a country like Canada, where you have several subsidiaries, many partners, thousands of employees and contractors, and long-term plans and high hopes. And then your CFO, who happens to be the princess of the company, is arrested there. What would you do then as a business? We try to understand the answer to this question from a strategy. Could you go back to the previous slide, please, William? Yeah, we try to understand this from a strategy perspective albeit, although our focus is on international strategy, it is not possible to entirely separate the political and business aspects of this phenomenon. They are so interwoven. This case is clearly not just a legal dispute against the business. It's deeply political. For example, symbolically enough, the day that arrest happened was exactly the day that President Donald Trump was meeting Chinese people in Argentina to reduce trade tensions. A few days later, Donald Trump mentioned that I can intervene in the case, I would intervene in the case if it would help US-China trade negotiations. And then at the Chinese end, you know that the arrest was simultaneous with the arrest of the 2 Canadian Michaels. And the freedom of Meng was also almost simultaneous with the freedom of the 2 Michaels. Yet Chinese authorities say that the simultaneity is an accident. And of course, we accept this say. So as you noticed, Huawei is not the first company who is facing such sanctions. Various companies like Deutsche Bank was fined by the US for breaching the same sanctions against Iran. But arresting a company executive is unprecedented. So Chinese people argue that this is a sort of weapon for a bigger trade battle between the 2 countries. And of course, Trump administration also followed a very stringent set of actions to urge its allies across the world to ban Huawei's 5G due to potential security threats. Now, we have Canada in this equation. Canada is a close ally of the US with strong ties to China, strong trade ties to China. China warned Canada by explicitly calling on Canada to stop pulling chestnuts out of the fire for the US in Huawei's case. So after the arrest, China was giving a hard time to Canada all the time, and Canadian government steadily tried to ameliorate the situation by diplomacy, avoiding provocation, while displaying interdependence of its courts. The impact of such political environment on Huawei's international strategy has a lot to learn. And today I discussed some of these learnings. What we did was a sort of process study, what we are still doing. You see this typical critical event analysis diagrams on the screen. These are just 2 examples of what we did. Between the 2 key dates, we looked into all of the actions taken by different parties, different players of this game. Different players included the 3 countries, in addition to the key allies of the US, in addition to Huawei itself, in addition to other businesses in IT industry in North America, what position they take and they are taking. Just let me mention that for several reasons, our data were limited to publicly available sources. There is no doubt that many other things are happening inside the companies, behind the closed doors. We didn't try to get those data for several reasons. And this is one of the key limitations of this research. Can we move to the next slide, please, William? Thank you so much. So in a very short, very short, and I'm happy that previous presenters have mentioned some of these. In a very short narrative, in the US, what Huawei did to respond to the pressures from the US was several things. First of all, Ren Zhengfei himself, which was a low-profile CEO up to then, became an active CEO, started a series of communications to support its company and his daughter. And the company adopted both active legal measures and business strategies to protect Huawei's leading companies. For example, after the ban in the US in 2019, Huawei launched a lawsuit against the American parties, the American system. In September 2019, Zhengfei also announced that they would continue producing next generation of 5G base stations without American parts. He also spoke about partnering with a US-based company to sell 5G technology. So these strategies are going hand in hand. But the partnering with American companies didn't happen. Although some American companies received exceptions to continue working with Huawei at that point of time, Some crises also happened with Google, as you know, and finally the two companies separated their ways under such political pressures. Worldwide, Huawei was still selling and being awarded some contracts for selling 5G technology, but in the United States, the company eventually turned down its business and laid off many employees when these actions generally failed to improve the situation for Huawei. In December 2019, Huawei announced that they are relocating their US research centers to Canada due to the sanctions. The company's R&D centers in Canada were active for many years, I think since 2008. Thank you. Now in Canada, let's take a look at the main things that they did in Canada. Although the arrest happened here, Huawei's growth strategy in Canada does not seem to take a highly defensive turn. Huawei offices, as mentioned before by others, offices are currently working in Vancouver, Ottawa, and elsewhere. And this happened despite the complicated relationships with its Canadian partners. For example, Rogers in Canada in 2019 took a very strong position against Huawei. Rogers was a partner of Huawei at that point, but they said, no, we should ban Huawei. The relationship with some other partners is still going on. Huawei also started a set of public policy strategies to ameliorate the situation and prevent the damage to its brand. So for example, they were reminding people that the same concerns about security threats were raised for its 5G technology years ago, but they were never supported by evidence after all these years. This is the argument that Huawei was making. And yeah, so this continued, they continued such public policy strategy over years. Also, the layer of funding working with academia continued as a previous strategy of the Huawei company, and they continued working with communities. This is a very smart strategy. They were working with Northern and Aboriginal communities in the past, but they put emphasis on it now. They try to strengthen the ties with their communities, like with SaskTel, to extend the broadband to some local communities, sponsoring activities, as mentioned by Thomas Liu, I think, previously. So this definitely strengthens the positions of the company, and they communicate such actions very openly. So the big question, William, you are 2 slides ahead of me. Could you just go one back? Okay. So the big question is whether Canada will use Huawei's 5G technology or not. And this question has still remained unanswered. Trudeau, Premier Trudeau, Justin Trudeau mentioned that he will answer this question soon. But anyways, so next slide, please. But to make sense of what is going on in Huawei's strategy, we need also to think about the nature of its business and the raison d'etre of its business in North America. And Huawei's B2B and B2C businesses have these different answers to this question. With respect to B2C, Huawei's publicity as a Chinese tech company might have been negatively impacted after all of these bans and other things. Nonetheless, selling cell phones is little of the ambitions such a company may follow in North America. Selling cell phone can happen everywhere in the world. What cannot happen everywhere in the world is R&D, innovation, development, standardization, and getting patents. Through ongoing standardization and patenting, Huawei can secure its future resources, capabilities, dynamic capabilities, and income streams, and develop next technologies, such as 6G, right? I'm sure they are working on it. I don't know, but there is no doubt. Disruption in this process, in this connection of capability creation, can diminish the role of the company in shaping the landscape of IT industry in future. That is the critical point. Therefore, the location advantage of Canada here for Huawei is serving this technological supremacy in the long term with advantages such as access to top-tier researchers, talent markets who bring success in global standardization of IT. You know, in North America, there are researchers, they can travel freely, go to industry conferences, get patents, they have language skills, they have passports. These look simple, but these are important for an international business. Next slide, please, William. Then, understanding the trends in macro environment also helps us better see the changing landscape here. I refer to two macro trends which are important in the future of international business. First is economic and technological advancement of emerging countries. You see emerging countries now are working on ICT, and countries with little political affinity with Western countries are doing a key role here. These countries are different from Western countries. They are supported by their central governments, these multinationals. The company is championed by the central government, and that is part of the institutions in those countries, which is different from institutions in Western countries. In Western countries, business environment in general, not a particular company, is supported by the government. So this creates new challenges, and the conflict between the institutions and values and countries creates new challenges. And so the second is the nature of IT business, because IT is impacting everything. Business, consumers, different industries, and this is unprecedented. The omnipresence of ICT and its interactions with other industries creates concerns about security, legitimate concerns. But this does not mean that trade-related sanctions are purely driven by the claimed national security threats. The divergence of positions demonstrate that. You know, we may ask, okay, different parties, different countries have taken different stances about potential threats. Some of them don't accept it, some of them accept it. But we need to define what is national security, what is threat. The threat is so ambiguous, and definitely it's not just technical. There are many social and political aspects in the concept of threat, which makes it difficult to interpret. So it's important to notice that Huawei's position in developing 5G technology is not a small-scale achievement. It's a game changer, and governments like US government are concerned about it. Business is less concerned about it. For example, the CEO of Cisco was once quoted that he has said the case is really overblown about Huawei. Many other businesses raise the same issue, that what is happening is not really commensurate with the size of threats. So business is taking different position compared to politics here too. A few further considerations, and I will wrap up. First of all is the difference in location advantages, just to remind that the concept of a location advantage in classical international strategy has completely changed, as you see in the case of Huawei. Location is a place for capability development. Also, look at the China's support of Huawei as a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it has helped Huawei, but on the other hand, it can reinforce the argument that government of China is behind Huawei, right? So this is something to consider when such collaboration, such ties become important. And finally, one other issue is the change in a strategic position of subsidiaries of Huawei in Canada. You know that when maybe one direction that Huawei is and can take is focusing on its subsidiaries in Canada as an internal service provider to its global network, rather than providing service to external customers of the company. The role in international strategy, the role of the subsidiary is changing, and considering the hostage diplomacy of China here and the role it played in the sanctions is also an important thing to notice with recent hunches about China's less international orientation in future, it will remain a question how firm strategies may be influenced by policies of the origin country. Thank you so much. This was just the gist of some topics to consider in this case, and I will be happy to discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hadi. Thanks very much for the profound, extensive, in the term of timeline revisit of the case, and also the tension between the, what happened for the past almost 3 years between the three countries, and also from a very objective way of looking at it, and also from the company's perspective, extending to the emerging multinational corporation and institutional differences. So I guess we might have a lot of questions from the participants. But in terms of time, I want to move on to our last two presentations. Then we have some time to bring into discussion. And our next speaker is Dr. Andrea Kjellman. And first of all, I'm going to stop sharing, okay, here with, okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to open his PowerPoint first. Okay, good. And Dr. Andrea Kjellman is the CEO of AKC Limited, and also a professor at the Novia University of Applied Sciences, and he has a background as brand member in several companies and organizations. For example, the Baltic Investment Program and the European Investment Bank's activities in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. He has worked as a senior financial advisor at the Ministry of Finance in Finland, and he's the author of 11 books and several journal articles on management, globalization, finance, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And his latest book concerns what is crucial behind success in our current finance-driven world. And his topic today is the case of Huawei and Nokia corporate resilience capability. So I'm going to share his first of all, share his PowerPoint with us. Thank you.
Thank you, William. And it was great to see that Xiaohua is also here, and also Thomas Finne, Dr. Thomas Finne, who is one of the authors. We have worked as a team to try to figure out what really lies behind resilience, not only short-term resilience to overcome a problem like Huawei have had, but in the longer term, long-term problem. So this is joint with Xiaohua, as I said, and from Finland also Thomas Westerholm, who is the director of the Disruption Lab at the University of Turku, and then in California also Park and Wu in China. So let's go on to the subject. And that is what builds corporate resilience. And this is, of course, a huge and really vast area to look at. But let's first have a look at what is corporate resilience. We see corporate resilience as an ability of a firm to anticipate, prepare for, respond, and adapt to incremental change, and also disruptions, in order to survive and prosper. So thereby we look at it a little bit more forward than ordinary risk management. And what we worked really hard on for a long time, and this is a project that's been ongoing, well, in this group for about 2 years, but before that we started already on a consultancy basis in the 1990s to help Nokia become more prosperous. And let's take one step further and go to the 2 case studies that we're having. And those on the next slide. Case studies is the one of Nokia, an old Finnish company established in 1865. And that company had of the mobile phones market 40% of the world market, 40% of the world market in 2007. and later on it was bought up in 2000, and the mobile phones part was bought up by Microsoft, that quit operations in 2015. So they went from 40% to 0% in just a while. These companies, of course, also, if we look at the North American perspective, they're owning, for example, the Bell Laboratories in the United States of America, and it has had a listing on the New York Stock Exchange since 1994. And this is one thing that we're going to be returning to in a while. Today, Nokia is far from beaten down. It's still the second largest producer of 5G networks, precisely the same size actually today as Ericsson. And looking at a little bit how you depend it, also Samsung is coming up fairly fast at the moment when we look at the 5G market. But of course, Huawei is the world's #1 when it comes to smart to the 5G market, and Huawei is just outstanding. It's larger than Ericsson and Nokia combined. So as we saw in the previous slide by Deepraj here, they're really good. So we started out to figure out what are these companies built on, and we started out with a perspective so we can help Nokia managers who are Novia managers, and also Ericsson to build up a better holistic objective. And of course, the first thing of the 6 that we're going to be presenting was very simple to find out. The first M that we find in our 6M model is what you all have been talking about, and in particular what Tuma started out this morning to talk about, and that is, of course, the manic product development. It's just amazing how great they are to Huawei at doing that, and having some 100,000 people working with that. The same thing was true with Nokia. So this is like, whoops, complex but very clear engineer-focused topics that they're working on, and it's going very well. And they're doing it, both companies are doing it mostly in-house, even if in the beginning Huawei was clearly a little bit more focused on copying from other places and learning that way. But let's go onwards. Yes, here are the 6 M's, the 6 golden M's that you have to think about in any type of organization. We would say it's the product development, manic one. Then you have to focus on a few markets. Notice that Nokia in 1992 they focused on two main markets, and that was the mobile phones and the networks, the telecom networks. And the same, then Nokia also had a third part, that, like Huawei today, they're having some extra parts there. And well, let's skip the markets. Then you need to have a management like Ren Zhengfei in Huawei. He's a very modest guy, and he has learned a lot, and it's value-based. As we know, their business Bible is called Built on Value, and it's a sort of lean management that is aiming for the long term. And what we could see here early on was that you can go one step backwards, but then money. It takes money to make money, and in Huawei they're focusing on putting their money not to the shareholders like in Nokia, which is a shareholder value thinking company, but instead it's more like putting on everything that you earn on research and development, spend on that. And we have to remember that in reality, Huawei is only having 2 owners. Then the 5th M is meaning, built on value, and the value in Huawei is of course the name of the company. China can, or China is able to, can Huawei be translated into, and customer centric thinking, helping customers, etc., connecting people as it was in Nokia. And then, of course, you need to have a feeling of we are equal to the company, me equals we. And Huawei was by Forbes this week considered number 8 in the world when it comes to the best company to work in. So now we can go one step forward and look at Nokia and the 6M models of Nokia. What happened at Nokia? And I'm only going to focus on basically 2 things. And that is that initial with the management was very technically orientated, managed product development. However, then something happened in 2006-7, and that was that Apple came up with the first iPhone, and Google came up with an Android system for mobile phones, and with Androids also the apps. And when the apps came, suddenly the largest giant in the world, Nokia, could not respond. So in 2007, when this happened, then it would only take some more 7 years, and Nokia would not be producing phones anymore. So the same management that took them to the top with Jorma Ollila and the myth around him, he had become the CEO in 1992 after a huge crisis at Nokia with a potential bankruptcy ahead. The other thing that can be recorded here in North America and Europe is that now many mergers and acquisitions, not only with Motorola and Bell, but with Siemens and other companies, really. Oh, you can go ahead. Yeah, really can be a troubling thing for a company. So when you're merging, you're losing the feeling of we equals the company, me does not equal the Nokia. That was one big thing that was very bad for Nokia. And of course, that the management had missed the turn towards the future of the customers with apps and all that in 2007. So despite that, they had at that point the world's largest R&D budget, they were unable to respond due to a feeling of fear inside of the company. According to the memoirs that the chairman who entered in 2012 wrote, Silas Mann. And when we look at these companies, the thing to remember when you look at a big picture is that value, meaning is important. Both companies are very customer-centric, engineer-like, focus on product innovations and product development, but only in certain markets. And it's going to be very interesting to see where Huawei is going to be ending up, because they're like starting to become a little bit like Nokia, focusing out on too many things at the moment. But of course, luck is also always a question that we have to think about. And in the case of China, in the case of Huawei, it was the state capitalism inside of China. And when we sum up what we have come up with in our team on the last slide here that we are having, where you're seeing that we find 6 fairly solid things. And those are to manage to focus on the product development, have a clear market focus, focus on a few markets. Nokia went in first into America, Huawei went into Africa, and other WTO countries where they did not look at rules that efficiently, and then Russia and into Europe. Have a management that is focusing forward looking. The myth around that management is also important. Focus your money that you're earning not on shareholders or any other stakeholders that they're saying it in Huawei, but focus it on product development. Have a clear meaning with your company, and remember that people need to really enjoy working where they're at. So the big thing to remember in our finance-driven world, and the book that is coming out or came out this week, you find to the right, And that is that in our finance-driven world with shareholder value thinking, things can happen very fast after a time when they have been building up and then just suddenly exploding. And then you read corporate resilience. You need to have sufficient money, and both Huawei and Nokia are having too little money. And for example, in 2019, when Nokia said that they will not be paying out the dividend anymore, in 1 month, 1/4 of the company's value had been dropping. So make sure that you have enough money to focus on the R&D developments. Thank you. And if Thomas or Xiaohua has something to add on in this, I would be very happy. So thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. Thanks for the wonderful comparison between Nokia and Huawei. This is just another example of extensive research collaboration between yourself in Finland and Xiaohua in San Francisco, and I see Wu Xiaobo also from Zhejiang University. Very large projects and make a lot of future potential contribution to look at the whole issue in terms of corporate resilience, and very comparable with our project, which is don't even need a fund to do it with a student, based on public sources. So I think there might be a lot of interesting projects in the future, not only looking at Huawei itself, but the whole corporate resilience, institutional differences, and also company strategy worldwide. So I'm not sure if we have any questions from the audience, and if Xiaohua wants to make a statement here, please do so. If not, I'm going to move forward with our last speaker, which is actually,
Sure.
yes.
Is it
please.
possible for me to come with a comment?
Definitely, yes, please.
Thank you. I would like to thank Anders for his long-term work with this study, and he has been the main driver for creating it, and as well as the presentation of today. I would like to add that there is a linkage here between resilience and risk management as well, as it tends to be that the less resilience, the bigger the risks are, so to say. For example, if we don't look long-term in R&D and we are resilient on that and keep a good self-discipline also in our R&D long-term projects, perhaps for years and even tens of years, then we will lose the edge at some time. This concerns, I believe, any organization. And there we have this risk management actually. And as an area, it's also huge resilience, and because it's involved in everything. And as we saw here, the six M's is one way to look at it, and a very good way, I believe. Sometimes in the world of today, investors look for very much quarterly based. They look 3 months, 4 months, or even perhaps seconds. But companies need to look long term and step by step work forward and in a resilient way. So these were my comments. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Anders.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah. Xiaohua, you want to say something?
Yeah.
Please. Yeah.
Sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. So glad I asked William, don't wait for me because my alarm clock didn't go off as I planned. Sorry about that. So I just want to make one comment to what you said earlier. So Anders did mention actually this study is not just based on public available data, and a couple of authors actually worked very closely with Nokia and with Huawei, and so we were able to access some pretty inside information, a lot of insights from the company. So I just want to make that clear. Yeah. And the study is actually continuing. And we're very lucky that Anders who came up with this 6M model. And we are now applying the 6 models to, the couple paper and continue to refine this model. And so Just
Thank
want
you.
to
Thank you, Xiaohua.
Yeah, thank you for
thank you, Anders, for the presentation.
yes, and thank you for the whole team from Europe and States and China work together on this. And we are coming to our last speaker, which is a masterpiece of stranding everything together, what we discussed and presented already. I want to introduce Professor Thomas Lairson, and he's a professor emeritus of political science at Rollins College, and also co-author of International Political Economy, The Struggle for Power and Wealth in a Globalizing World, which was published in 2017 with David Skidmore. Professor Lairson is author of numerous articles on topics ranging from the international political economy of US-China relations, Chinese economics development, American foreign policy in the early Cold War, to the political economy of high technological development. Professor Lairson was the first Ford Foundation Professor of International Relations at the Institute for International Relations in Hanoi in 1994. And he has taught at several Chinese universities and at Jindal Global University in India. And his current research is a book on the political economy of technology and innovation in China. And his topic today is involving Chinese state capitalism, deepening global interdependency, and Huawei's up from the bottom innovation. So I'm going to share the slides and give the floor to Professor Thomas Lairson. Thank you.
Thank you, William. And thanks also to Wenxin for inviting me to participate in the conference. So if we could go on and move to the next slide, I'll begin. There we go. So one of the questions that I want to talk about today is, how did Huawei become such an innovative firm? And I think if you were to ask an economist, their answer to that question would be markets did it. As was demonstrated by our discussion today, if you were to ask business faculty, their answer would be firm capabilities. If you ask a political scientist, they would say it was states. But if you ask someone like me, an international political economist, they would say that it was the interaction of firms, markets, and states, with the key word there being interaction. And so my discussion today will attempt to answer the question, how did Huawei become such an innovative firm, by looking at the interaction of markets, firms, and states. Next slide, please. So the first item here, I will try to go, by the way, since the time has already passed here, I'll try to go as quickly as possible. So here is a brief rendition of the idea of state capitalism in China, with a variety of dimensions, including the distributed authoritarianism, in which authoritarianism is fragmented among various levels of the state, the capacity for creating firms, the control of capital, the intense commitment to economic growth and national power, a particular state telecom policy for trading market access and tech transfer in China in the 1980s, an effort to build firms from the bottom up, which actually created 200 telecom firms in China in the late 1980s, one of which was Huawei. It's sort of interesting, how did one Huawei and ZTE show up years later? And then, of course, special loans at various points to Huawei in order to boost its ability to operate successfully. So the next slide, please. Yes. Yes, thank you. So the second area, the markets area, is deepening global interdependence. And here what you find is that there are various features of the period between 1993 and 2008 that produce enormous changes in the structure of the global economy, in particular by deepening global interdependence. There's we're all mostly familiar with these, I think. The high levels of global trade, FDI, creation of FIEs in China, the creation of global production networks, the creation of global innovation and knowledge networks. All of those are a product and are new institutions in the global economy as a result of deepening interdependence. In addition, there are rising strategic alliances among multinational firms. There's an explosive expansion of knowledge-based products and firms. And the last point I guess I would make is only firms able and willing to take advantage of this were successful, in particular their capacity for large knowledge absorption and application. So the next slide, please. So here's a couple of slides with just simply some data on them to refresh your memory that there were several waves of globalization of a rising FDI into China, beginning in about 1993, a wave and then a bigger wave and then a drop and a bigger wave, even though the percentage of GDP falls essentially after about 1994 for FDI, it remains in the $200+ billion a year for several years in the period after 2010. Next slide, please. So here's simply some data about globalization as a whole. You'll see there were really two big waves, unless you want to count the one back in the 1980s, which was a little hump there. But what it shows, I think, is that the level of globalization is much more, FDI is much more dramatically variant in the world than it is in China, even though it varies some in China. So if you continue next slide. So here's a brief overview of Huawei's innovation between 1993 and 2008. By the way, I picked those two dates because, of course, 1993 is the period when China reopens following Tiananmen, and 2008 because of the global financial crisis. That's the focus that I want to have today. So from Huawei's perspective, most of these points here I think have been mentioned at some level today already, which is that there were distinctive firm capabilities by Huawei, its emphasis on R&D in rural markets, its capacity to re-engineer and upgrade a digital switch for the Chinese market, and HiSilicon's ability to develop the first ASIC, all before 1994. I think those were impressive accomplishments and forecast, I think, success in the future. But it was not just Huawei, it was state policies which played a major role in bringing firms into China, in bringing knowledge into China, in bringing FDI into China, in creating new institutions in China, and in deepening interdependence in China. And those, I think, are, if you simply scan down the page there, you can see what those are. Huawei's upgrading policies, I think, what you see here, which were interesting and important and linked to the state, was beginning in 1982, you can see that all of the digital switches in China were imported. And by the end of this period here, by 2000, there were 0 imported. What happens in that interim is the state engages in an effort to bring foreign firms into China, to diffuse knowledge around China, which helps to give Huawei an opportunity. The state also engages in a series of support systems. And so by the end of this period, Huawei is the most important producer of digital switches in China, which I think is interesting. Next slide, please. So here is a broader, lengthier discussion of the development of Huawei's global value chains in the years from 2000 to 2008. What begins in the late 90s and early 2000s is that Huawei moves towards globalization. But globalization means, in part, selling products abroad, but equally important, and probably more important, Huawei was engaged in linking to the forms of deep interdependence that were beginning to emerge there. They engaged in gaining and incorporating and applying knowledge. And so you can see lists of them there with IBM, with Carnegie Mellon. Huawei itself was creating global knowledge networks and global innovation networks, most of which were built around the problem of system integration. As Huawei begins to go into the rest of the world, its operational systems become far more complex and far more important, and the demands on them increase greatly. And they need to learn how to solve those problems. And they do that by linking themselves into global knowledge networks in companies and in other kinds of places, universities and whatnot. What's important, I think, to understand is that Huawei was very successful in doing this. I think the reason for that is it had lots of state support. Probably more important, it has very large R&D capabilities, and as a consequence, it was able to both locate, find, and link to those sources of global knowledge. And I believe that was the basis for its evolving global value chains, which are the basis for its success in those years. So next slide. So here's a slide that simply tries to talk about some of the consequences. Where was Huawei at roughly the end of this period, 2008 to 2011? And you will see that in 2011, Huawei had moved from being a Chinese producer, which dominated its market, to, in effect, the number 2 producer of telecoms equipment by 2011. Only Ericsson was ahead of them. So in a period of roughly a decade, Huawei moved from a Chinese-based firm to a global leader, which is quite important, I think. The one area in which they were, of course, not very successful was in North America, as you can see in the bottom right-hand quadrant there. Next slide, please. So I think I'm doing pretty good here. I'm sticking under 10 minutes. The conclusions here. I think it's important to understand that Huawei's global value chain, the whole complement of arrangements of sales and of knowledge linkages that are involved, reflects the global system of deep interdependence that began to emerge in the 1980s. It explodes, and Huawei rides the crest of that wave over that period of time. And I think it's important to understand that their capacity to do this was in large part because of their own success in China, but also the success that was posted on them in by the
Okay, so we are going to, let's do 15 minutes until, let's do 15 minutes discussion and the Q&A time. I see quite a few questions in the chat box. If I can go back to, there are a couple of questions going to, there's one question going to Hadi, which is asking what is your prognosis as to whether Huawei's strategy will overcome the lack of trust in some of their important markets. So Lisa's question concerning the trust issue of the company, and also we have other questions asking the R&D and also the competitive nature between Huawei and other companies. So maybe I can start with Hadi to answer the question. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for the great question. I think we should separate countries and we should separate the nature of business in different B2B and B2C businesses that Huawei has in different countries. I think B2C is more impacted by this negative publicity in different countries. And also, for example, in the US, given the existing pressure, Huawei is already not an active player in the US. I don't think this situation will change. This is just the institution with this animosity. I don't think it will be resolved in soon future in the US. Well, Canada is more acceptable, but still, if you look at Canada, the country's decision about 5G technology, Canada is the only of the 5I, the so-called 5I countries that has not banned Huawei's 5G yet. The 4 others have already banned. And many people believe that Canada will ban too after the resolving this problem in September, the arrest problem. So at the B2B level, maybe the situation will continue for a while, but at the B2C, probably company can work on it because of the, the nature of the country is not as anonymous. In Canada, people are more acceptable to other, I think, countries compared to some other countries. So yeah, maybe they can do something in the short term in some contexts. I mean, Huawei can do something, but not in some other context.
Yes, thank you, Hadi. We have another question based on Ray's presentation, our second speaker, and he recommended that Huawei diversify to address declining growth rates. And also, this is like a caution against losing focus. The question is, are these two sides of the same coin? Going to our second speaker. Thank you.
I surely think so. It's really the R&D, as I was mentioning to you. I was thinking about R&D, and in terms of the R&D is going to be the insurance. That's the insurance plan. So, spending like $22 billion is definitely giving that the focus is there with R&D, and which is what it should be. I was suggesting also that if you diversify, if you have a few more other, channels, and you don't necessarily have to right now invest, a significant investment should be there. What I was suggesting is if you fractionally diversify a little bit, then that helps to really take leverage once those, profit declines. And not necessarily, I was not necessarily saying that those are substitutes. I was necessarily saying that those are complements, So I think in terms of R&D, in terms of having the focus, staying focal about it, along with the fact that you have invested in other things, especially like electric vehicles. We all know that that's really a crowded market right now in China, especially right now with NIO, with NETA, you have a crowded market out there. But if you do, and with the telecom, so with the advantage of this network telecom equipment provider, you can actually get into the electric vehicles and can actually influence that market. So if you have that opportunity, if you have that economies of scale already with you, why not to take advantage of it? Not necessarily to lose focus, but to make it as a complement, not as a substitute, So.
Thank you. So another question related with R&D spending from Thomas. How to direct R&D to coming markets? And are we looking at more disruptive innovation? I think that's also a question going to Professor Regis, right? Thomas, who are you asking this question? I'm not quite sure because you put on this question to all the audience.
Yes, actually, it's so vast question. So I believe every presenter somehow has touched it or been linked to it. But the thing is that we have so many channels to get that information, and we can do customer analysis, and we can create prototypes. You can do business intelligence, and we have huge R&D budgets as Huawei have here. But how to really see where are we in 10 years? Because that's the really big thing. What is the new disruptive things coming, and to go in that direction? So this is a huge question, of course, but would be happy to hear actually anyone's thoughts about it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm not sure if anybody from this panelists want to address this question. Actually, it's quite important because of the current COVID-19 pandemic situation and digitalization of the world economy, and basically brings more and more important looking at the disruptive innovation. Do we have anybody from the panelists can address this question? Yes, please, Professor Lairson. Thank you.
Yes, I think when you look at Huawei in particular, one of the big issues that has the potential for having disruptive, innovative effects is the Internet of Things. That is, you move from a world in which you're trying to move talk or video back and forth in a fixed spot to managing and dealing with hundreds of millions, perhaps billions of small sensors in varieties of settings, dealing with autonomous vehicles. The job will be for Huawei and other kinds of providers like that to manage and develop those systems. And the only way they can be managed is by upgrading and integrating artificial intelligence. And so the areas of the company that manages and deals with that kind of problem will be most likely the most important successor to the companies that are here now. Perhaps that will be Huawei, perhaps not.
Thank you. So we have one more formal question going to Professor Lairson also. You mentioned the $610 million state banks lent to Huawei. What was that at? Is this at the concession rates?
The 610 million, 10 million of it came from the Chinese Development Bank and 600 billion came from the Chinese Export-Import Bank. And the answer is yes.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm not sure if any former questions coming from the audience. And if not, I'm going to, oh, okay, we have one more question coming from Professor Bernadette Andreso based in Ireland. Thank you.
Thank you, William, and thank you to the speakers, really. It's a question for Anders Kjellman, the Nokia Huawei comparison, which I found extremely interesting. But and it connects also to the last presentation. We have all, from a European perspective, we have all been amazed by the demise of Nokia. And you gave the explanation. There's very much a management, marketing kind of. But I'm just wondering, are there policy elements, there are political elements? Sure. What has been the policy behind it? What did the Finnish government do? Bearing in mind that we are in the European Union, which tries to foster innovation and living terms. So that's my question. Thanks.
Yes, what many has been writing about is the wonder of Nokia, and one thing that's lifted in front is then the educational system, that you get very high quality of the engineers and you get sufficient amount of engineers coming into the Nokia. Cooperation between the government, universities and firms. This triangle has been working fairly well. And we had Tekes, which was an institution before that put money into technological innovations. And that helped Nokia a lot. And this is still ongoing, but it's called Business Finland now. And they're putting money into different types of projects, but not as successful as the ones in the 90s and early the 2000s. So that is one political explanation of it. There are, of course, others also. And as we write in the paper, the military sector can order products from companies, and that helps, of course, the companies to develop these things.
Thank you. So we also want to, we have one more comments from Professor Feng Lianyong based in China University of Petroleum. Please.
Okay, thank you, William. So to me today, the conference is so good, very good, and have a very good impression to me and my students, I think. But before I have done less research on this topic. but it is very interesting for me. For example, to how to analyze the different companies. For example, today the one of the scholar expert Anders Kjellman, he used 6 factors modeling to analyze Huawei and the other company. It is giving me a very good suggestion. So maybe I can find some Chinese expert to join with this group. And this group is very interesting for them to join in. So my suggestion is maybe after this conference, so William can do make the group of the WeChat or Skype or some tools to make people to communicate together. Not just one time conference. I think maybe it is useful for us.
Yes, thank you, Professor Feng.
Thank you, William, and co-organizers, 6 co-organizers.
Thank you, Professor Feng, for the wonderful suggestion. Actually, it's not my conference, China Goes Global conference. So I want to thank again for the board of directors of CGG. This is our 15th conference, and also I want to thank Huawei support. Huawei North American support for this conference. So I'm going to hand over to the president of CGG to wind up the conference. This is our second day of the number 3 panel. If you want to conclude the conference, that'd be really great. Thank you. I also want to thank all the insightful presentation and active contribution from our 6 panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, William. I just wanted to say on behalf of the board members of the Chinese Globalization Association, thank you to all the panelists and the participants today. One of our signature contexts here is the interdisciplinary nature of these conversations. And I think that we've heard from different perspectives today, and I hope that Thomas will take away some suggestions and some thoughts on how Huawei has managed to succeed and can manage to thrive in the future. My own background is in political science, so I very much appreciated, Tom, your perspectives from the IPE discipline to look at the intersection of these different things. And I think that working with China, we all see the very real and the very significant intersection of the state and the market and the firms. So on that note, I would just want to say thank you all again for being a part of this second online conference. And Professor Feng, I encourage you, I applaud that suggestion. We really do want to keep these conversations going in as many different formats as possible. So we'll take up your suggestion and also another person's suggestion about trying to do more have more Chinese translation or interpretation, or maybe ongoing subtitling. Although next year we hope to see you all in person at a location and place to be announced. Location should be virus-free. The time should be sometime in the summer, back to our normal schedule. But stay tuned, and we will try to announce that as soon as possible as we line up